Hey everybody. As Marie mentioned, I'm Jake Kundert. I'm the Food Systems Director at the Iowa Valley RC&D. And the focus of my presentation is going to be on the Farmers Market Manager Toolkit, which is a resource that our office in Northeast Iowa RC&D has been developing and just published here in the beginning of the year. And so I'm going to go over that resource, but just wanted to touch on our organization. We're based in Amana, and our focus is, our mission is to enhance quality of life for Iowans by strengthening food systems, leading collaborative placemaking projects, and bringing technical assistance to rural communities. And so community, food, farm, environment is kind of the our work, and farmers markets fit really nicely into that realm. So we've focused on farmers markets and bringing resources to farmers markets and managers and vendors across the state for the past few years here. And so this resource is just one of them. So before I dive into the toolkit, I want to just mention, again, this is a resource that we developed with our partners at Northeast Iowa RC&D. So a lot of people in both of our offices spent time working on this project and putting this together. So just wanted to give a shout out to the team that worked on this. So before I jump in, I'll kind of just breeze through the slides I have here. Feel free to interrupt me at any point with any questions. And then if you want to just put in the chat box, I'll have that open too, or Marie, you can let me know if you see anything in there, but yeah, feel free to interrupt me. So the toolkit has these three main components. We put together the Farmers Market Manager Manual. There's also 12 handouts, which are specifically geared towards market vendors, but with the idea that we would supply these to market managers who would then have them in their toolbox to be able to answer frequently asked questions that vendors have. So these are things like, what are the business opportunities at the farmers market? How do I make my stand look nicer? How can I improve my branding? What insurance do I need? So those kinds of questions. And then we did a series of trainings across the state and have video recordings of those. So that's the final component. Those kind of range from food assistance programs and how to implement them at your market, working on metrics and how to collect data at your market. And those were using with some leaders, market leaders across the state that led some of those trainings. And those are all on YouTube. And I'll show you a link at the end of this presentation where you can find all of these things. But the main focus of this presentation is going to be on the toolkit, or excuse me, on the manual. So the manual, it's a 100-page document. It's broken up into 5 chapters. And so the kind of the overview of this presentation, I'm just going to go chapter by chapter, and I'm going to pull out a couple key things that I feel like are relevant to both managers and vendors, given the kind of the group that are here today. So I tried to pull things that would be of interest and be valuable to your situation, whether you're a vendor or a manager. So those chapters are what's a farmer's market, and then there's a chapter on, chapter 2 is on what does it mean to be a market manager, and then planning your market, preparing for the season, and then improving and measuring performance. And then at the end, I just have a couple slides on markets and COVID-19. It sounds like there's been some talk of that already today. And if there's a couple things that I can add there, great. If it's already been covered, then we can just kind of go through those. But there's a lot of the markets that are year-round in different parts of the country are already implementing things to try to make their markets continue given the pandemic. And I think they have some lessons to teach us. So I just have a couple things to share there. But we'll just dive right in. So chapter 1 is all about what is a farmer's market. And it provides some historical context about markets across time, and then talks a little bit about the history of Iowa markets. So this is kind of just a fun chapter primer. Markets across the country and the world are interesting because they've ebbed and flowed over the years. You know, at the beginning of the country in the late 1700s, early 1800s, every place had a market. Every town had a market, if not multiple. And then those kind of declined over time as supermarkets came about. And then in the 70s, markets kind of sprung back up again, and then declined a little bit again in the 80s and 90s, and then there's kind of been another resurgence. So it's really kind of been a cyclical process. But we did a lot of research on markets in Iowa and found some really fascinating historical documents. So this is, on the left here is the Dubuque Farmers Market. If you're familiar with the Dubuque, that's the City Hall building, and the market is still around that area. And but this is, I don't know when exactly this photo is taken, but that was the market back in the day. People would come with their horses and pull up around City Hall and sell their products. And this little quote section here is from it's called The History of Dubuque County. Every county in Iowa has one of these books, and they're the most interesting thing to read because they're just this mishmash of like court records and city elections and town gossip, and I don't know, they're very interesting. But they have talks about how in the beginning of this section here, it says that who was elected mayor, who was elected to the town hall, and then it says Mr. Trower was named the first market master in 1840. And I just think that's so interesting that it seems like they held that position in similar esteem to the mayor. You know, there's the mayor, there's the clerk, and then there's the market master. And then it talks about how it was $15 a year to have a stand in the market, and you were given your choice inside by highest bidder. And then it talks about how they had a cannon for the city use for $25. Anyway, so I just think this is an interesting, oh, and then the last thing, it started at 3 a.m. and went to 10 a.m. every day except for Sunday from May to October. So I think it's just interesting to kind of see how markets have evolved over time. So then today, this is as of 2018, and this kind of increases and decreases over time, but in general, we have about 180 to 200 markets in Iowa that are registered. And there was a jump between 94 and 2009 of 70%. So these are really, they are, again, you know, it's a kind of an ebb and a flow. So now we seem to kind of have a resurgence of markets. So that's chapter one again is just kind of a fun historical look at markets. And chapter 2 is really getting into the role of being a market manager. And so in this one, we talk about that specific role and kind of give an example job description kind of the market manager. And then we have a section on building community around your market. And then talk about the different scenarios that market managers can be in. So you can either be a new manager and starting a new market, or you can be a new manager coming into an existing established market. And those are kind of different positions to be in. So there's different considerations about how you might approach that new role. And then we just have a section about what vendors wish you knew as a market manager. So it's just a series of quotes that we reached out to vendors across the state just to say, what do you think, what do you feel like you want the market manager to know about what it is to be in that role? In this chapter, I wanted to really focus on the building community around your market section. I feel like it was the most fun to do the research for, because we just got a call around, and I'll show you this at the end, but really I feel like the strength of this publication and this resource is that it was very much, a lot of focus was spent on getting input from market managers across the state of markets of a range of sizes. So getting direct input on what they're doing at their market. So we just, in this section, it was just finding out what people are doing to bring community to their market, to bring different kinds of customers, to make it more than just a place to buy food, but a place to kind of meet people and congregate. And then through that congregation, you're kind of leading to more customers for your vendors. So this is at the Waterloo Urban Market. This is DeQuan Campbell. He's the market manager there. And it's it's called Mimosas and Masterpieces. And they had a group from, it was a partnership with the Waterloo Center for the Arts to do kind of like a painting class for people at the market. And then they had mimosas. So just a way to kind of add another element that you might not consider to bring to the market. There's also things you can have groups that come and meet for, maybe they're a running club or a walking club or a cycling club, and they meet at the market either at the beginning or the end of their run, walk, or bike ride, and just as a place to kind of meet with their group and hang out. Obviously, having live music at your market, and then cooking demonstrations, which are pretty commonly used across the state. And then just a couple more. This is one of my favorites if I'm trying to, I'm not biased, but this is, and in Grinnell, the Grinnell Farmers Market did a partnership with a couple schools in their city, and went to each school. I think they read a book to the kids about, maybe it was like a farmer's book or something about farmers markets or farmers. And then they put out a contest for a certain age range, and I can't remember exactly what it was, but they had the specific requirements of what a poster had to be for the farmer's market. And then the kids got to just be creative and draw a poster for the market. And then they gathered all of the entries. I think they had maybe 70 the first year, and it's doubled in the second year. I think last year was the second year they did it. They choose the 5 best posters, and then they post those around town as a way to market the market. And then the kids that win, that are chosen, they get, I think, $5 for the market. So it's a way to just keep getting kids and young families interested in coming to the farmers market. And a story that Kendra, the market manager, tells is that in the first year, there were some entries that had kids that were drawing like oranges or avocados or things that we don't grow in Iowa. And then so showing that they might not be as familiar with the market. But in the second year, they see kids drawing actual vendors from the farmer's market in Grinnell, like the guy who brings his red truck to deliver apples. The kids are drawing that red truck and the guy with the apples. So you can kind of see in this short amount of time the engagement that these kids are, just from this contest, are becoming more familiar with the market. So I think this is it's a fun, pretty low cost way to just get more people involved in the market. And I just love it. The kid wrote so many different stands. I love that little drawing thing on the map. Anyway, a couple other things are Power of Produce, which I think you do. Marie, do you do Power of Produce in any of the markets up here?
Mason City has Power of Produce, yeah.
Yeah. So it's a way to, it's a existing program. You can get a toolkit that talks through how to do it, how to implement it, but it's just a way to bring younger kids to the market and kind of give them an engaging activity, and then they get to go out and kind of meet some of the vendors and choose some of their own products. And then I think I saw Jody was on here, but this is something that Jody's doing in Cedar Falls with a business reward card. So Jody, tell me if I'm explaining it wrong, but essentially working with businesses around the community to find little incentives that they can add as a partnership with the market. So the market develops a rewards card, and each customer, as they spend, I think it was $3, Jody, every $3 they spend, they get a punch, and then maybe they get, I think there was a deal at Copyworks. There was maybe a discount on an appetizer at a restaurant, things like that. So just another way to build partnerships across the community and a way to try to retain some continued business for the market. And as I mentioned, a lot of the work that was done in this toolkit was trying to get direct input from market managers. So we have quotes throughout, and with each chapter, I'll have a section with just quotes from a manager. So this is from Julie Grunkley, who was a market manager in the Blackhawk County area. And so in this chapter, we talked a little bit about vendors and trying to kind of decide what your market is going to be and how to get vendors to fit that mold that you want to create. So her input was do your research, find what customers want, and then find vendors that provide that. So it doesn't do any good if your vendors are selling cupcakes and your customers want carrots. And one way to try to find out what your customers want is doing some kind of weekly question, like what did you come to the market for this week? We have a section in the manual that's all about measuring performance and doing surveys. And so there's these dot surveys that markets are using to try to get input from customers, where they just put a dot on a big piece of paper that asks a question. So you can have your question be, what do you come to the market for this week? And then have a couple options, like for produce or for crafts or for prepared foods or whatever it might be. And then the customer just kind of puts a dot on the thing that they came for. And so that gives you really valuable information on who to try to recruit for vendors. Chapter 3 is all about market planning. So really the kind of details of your market, like market hours, your fees and fine structure, and then getting into your business structure and your layout and rules and financial planning and preparing for severe weather and emergencies. So the things I wanted to pull out in this one are vendor recruitment and then financial planning. So with vendors, there are a couple things to kind of consider. So again, this goes back to what I was just talking about with Julie. So the think about what vendors you want at your market, or if you're already existing, what additional market vendors do you need to kind of fit in with where you want to be? So is it more produce vendors? Is it more meat vendors? Do you want more crafts or prepared foods? So really just kind of get that written down so you can, it's not just in your head, but it's actually in some kind of strategy for your market. And then once you know kind of where you want to go and what your goals are, you can be very strategic with who you're trying to reach out to. And then kind of put together an idea of what facts and figures you can be offering to prospective vendors. So when you approach a vendor if you really want to get more produce vendors, maybe find a couple that you think would fit that and might be interested in adding a market to their existing kind of revenue streams, and really be specific. So say if you could offer how many customers you have every week, maybe find out exactly how far your market is from where their farm business is, or where they're if they have a business in town, give them an exact idea of miles. So it shows that you put the work in to actually figure out them specifically, how to get them to be at your market. Maybe share how many existing similar vendors that they have, how much competition they might have at the market. And then any kind of market achievements you can think about. So have you grown steadily over a number of years? Have you really been happy with how you've implemented a specific program or a partnership that you developed? Or have you gained a really crucial sponsor in recent years? Anything that you can show that your market you're kind of doing that hard work to keep your market going, can be a really helpful kind of pitch to them. And then think about when you want to contact vendors. So in general, for produce vendors, I mean, most vendors, I would say, it's kind of that off-season period, probably after the holidays, after the new year. January, February might be a good time to contact people. Maybe earlier, but I think vendors and managers both have a little bit of burnout after the season ends. So it's nice to have a little period of kind of refiguring out what you want for the next year, and then approach people with ideas. And then how are you advertising those vendor gaps? So social media obviously is a good way to do it. Talk to extension offices, current vendors, maybe they know other vendors from other markets they go to, or other networks that they're working within, that they know people who might be looking for another market, and even have other managers you might know in the area can help you find vendors. And then really, I wouldn't underestimate the value of just putting up flyers in public spaces, have ads run in local newspapers, really any way to just kind of get in front of people in high traffic areas. And then just briefly about budgeting. It's a little more in depth in the manual, but just briefly, if you're kind of starting from nothing, go back to last year's numbers if you have them, and then add up what you think your projected expenses are. So you kind of figure out what your line items are of your expenses, figure out where those kind of fit as amounts, and then put together your expected income. Ignore this column, it doesn't add up, but these numbers are right. And then kind of compare those numbers. And obviously you want to have more income than you have expenses, and don't ignore that too. To kind of keep your market solvent. But even if you're a small market and your vendor fees are low and your income might not be very high, I think it's still important to have something like this set up so you can be prepared for growth, or be prepared for really managing this the market in a financially sound way. And then again, in this chapter, there's sections about just those general market duties and ways that the market manager, can be promoting their market. And I really like this quote from Bob Shepard from the Washington Farmers Market, who talked about when he started his market, he knew that the market itself could be a big benefit, not just to the market and the vendors, but to the local businesses. So he went around town and talked to those businesses in person and just pitched them on the value of the market. And he said that if they help him promote it, he's going to bring a crowd downtown. So the businesses put up flyers on their windows, they talked to local media, and they really kind of collaborated as a community to bring people down to the market. And it worked, and the market has been going for 40 some years and has been significant success. Okay, chapter 3. Excuse me, chapter 4 is all about just preparing for the market season. So again, some detailed things like liability insurance and communication of rules. Once you've established your rules, how do you communicate and enforce them? A significant section on food assistance related things. I won't go into that. It sounds like Aaron just went over that pretty significantly. But we have some great resources in here for SNAP and double up food bucks, and then a couple ideas about that markets are using to innovate and try to increase the food assistance programming at their markets. And then some about customer service and some special events. So I was going to talk specifically about conflict resolution and customer service in this one. I feel like the conflict resolution section is probably one of the ones I'm most proud of in this toolkit. I feel like it's such a common thing at farmers markets, and really doing it well can really improve the standing of the market, I feel like. So there's a couple different sections about this, but this seemed like the easiest to kind of cover here. So just 3 quick steps to try to broadly think about conflict resolution. So if someone comes to you, a vendor comes to you, a customer comes to you with some kind of conflict, you want to really take in everything that they're saying and make sure that they feel like they're being heard. So one way to do that is through reflective listening. And a very common, easy strategy is just using phrases like, "This is what I think you're telling me," or "This is what I hear you saying." And that can not only make sure that you understand what they're trying to communicate, but it also gives them a chance to hear what they're saying in a maybe, from you. So it's a different perspective that they can kind of reflect on what they're really wanting you to know. So that's kind of the first place to start. And then you might want to just set expectations for next steps. So if you can't do something about it right now, if they're asking for a larger kind of change to the market that you're not prepared to do in the middle of the season, and you want to kind of think about and try to implement it in a more strategic way, just give them kind of a timeline. So I can't do what you're asking right now, but I'll address it at the end of the season meeting, or we'll address it next month, or whatever it might be, but just kind of set a defined date. And then last, just make sure that you follow through on that. I think it's important to, even though maybe they don't talk to you about that issue anymore, it's still important to do what you said you're going to do as far as kind of meeting that timeline that you put forward. So again, there's a couple things. If conflict resolution is something that you want to improve upon, there's a couple really nice sections in here, including Andrea Vaghi from the Global Greens Market in Des Moines has a really nice section on what she does for conflict resolution at their market that is really helpful, I think. And then Daquan also had this great quote about conflict being inevitable. And he thinks the best tool is just being consistent. So that whatever you're talking about with your vendors at the beginning of the season, just make sure that you're doing that consistently, and so that vendors aren't surprised by what you're doing. And he says you have to be consistent and firm, but you have to be firm. That info, you have to be firm. Okay, customer service. I think this is, I wanted to make sure to include this here because I feel like the customer service element, because of the unique situation that markets are in, it can't be just the market manager or the market staff or market volunteers. It really needs to be vendors and then the staff for all vendors. I think it needs to be really a cohesive thing that everyone is putting forward for the customer. Because I feel like if a customer comes to a market that they might be new to, one bad experience with one vendor can kind of ruin the whole market for them. So it really needs to be something that's communicated across everyone involved in the market. So for the manager, making yourself very visible at the market. So Bob Shepard wears a white hat. He wears a white hat to every market. And so he knows if anybody needs to find him, they just say, go find that guy in the white hat. And so I think that's a way to just make it so people know how to find you. And then help out where you can. So where and when you can. So that might be, so Eileen Schmidt in Urbana actually helps her vendors load and unload their items from their vehicles and put on their market stand. At different market sizes, that might not be realistic, but she's small enough and feels like that's an added value she can provide to her vendors. Maybe it's helping a customer find an item that they're looking for, or maybe it's helping the customer take the stuff that they bought to their vehicle. So just anything that you can add to make either the experience for the vendors and the customers just more enjoyable, I think is a valuable thing to spend time on. And then equip your staff to help customers. So the Ames Farmers Market has all the staff and volunteers for the Ames Market have these little lanyards. And on the back of the lanyards, there's kind of like a map for where to find all the vendors at the market. And so the staff might not know off the top of their head where everything is, but they have this resource on them, like actually strapped to their neck, that they can use to help customers when they say, oh, where's that one popcorn vendor? I can never find them, and they can help them right away. So think about how, if you do have staff or volunteers, you're kind of just giving them the tools that they need to be able to help the customers. Another kind of similar item is there's a couple markets like Decorah and Des Moines that have these wagons for customers that want to be able to haul around product with them. So maybe it's to their car or just be able to carry stuff around while they walk around the market. That can be kind of a one-time investment that you might be able to get some grant funding for, or you can put sponsors alongside of them. So I think there's ways to fund those. And it's a way where you're just giving a customer something that's going to allow them to buy more stuff, which is what we want them to do. So just think about those easy ways that you might be able to give the customers what they might need that can make them shop more or buy more. And then don't be afraid to engage with customers. We talked to a couple managers who just mentioned the value of, if they're walking around and they see someone that looks like they're might be lost or trying to find something, stop them. Say, hey, can I help you find whoever you're looking for, or the vendor you're looking for, and actually even walk them to that vendor and introduce them to that vendor. I feel like so much there's the interaction between customer and vendor is just a kind of a monetary exchange or a business exchange. But if you can break that wall and let the customer know this is farmer so-and-so and has been here for 10 years, and meet this customer whose name is this, they're always going to know each other's name from that point on. And you as a manager have kind of catalyzed that relationship. That might not have happened otherwise. So I think just engagement with customers can be a really valuable way to just make them more consistent and dedicated visitors of your market. This section also has a event planning. And Jen Draper she was the former manager of the Cedar Rapids Farmers Market and was the event planner for the whole Cedar Rapids Metro Economic Alliance. So did a lot of event work, and in our event planning discussion with her, she really focused on this value of planning ahead. So if you think you can do something in 3 weeks, imagine if you gave yourself 6 and how much better it could be and how much more polished it could be. And it just, even that amount of time to just kind of give you and your staff time to think about it can be really valuable. So if you're planning an event, just kind of map out a little more time to be able to achieve whatever you might want to be trying to do. So chapter 5 is all about improving and measuring performance. So in this chapter, we talk a lot about fundraising and just kind of general ideas for your markets, seeking and securing sponsorships, and then a lot about marketing and measuring performance. And then one of my favorite sections in this whole book is on strategies for success, which I haven't included in this presentation, but is worth checking out. We just asked every market manager we talked to what they would suggest as a strategy for their success. And there's some really great kind of bits of wisdom in there. So here I was going to focus on marketing and then measuring performance. So marketing. There's a lot more space dedicated to this in the book, but I wanted to just pull out a couple things that seemed like a reasonable chunk to focus on here. So do's and don'ts. So for things to focus on, make sure that that you make a marketing calendar and checklist for yourself. And so think about the entire year of your market and map out things that might be, maybe you have an event in June that you want to start planning for in April, or you want to make sure that you post the event to Facebook by a certain day in May, or you want to make sure that you're doing repeated promotion for it throughout that time. You want to be able to send out a press release by a certain day. But then there's also things that are going on with the market the whole year. So maybe you do, maybe you're doing Snap at the market, and you want to just make sure that you're kind of repeatedly making sure people know that they can spend their Snap dollars at the market. So that might be a longer term thing, but these, they have different timelines and different deadlines and different ways to approach them. So having a marketing calendar where you can house all these things can be really helpful as you plan how you allot your time to focusing on marketing for your market. And then really use local media as best as you can. It's a great way to get free promotion for your market. There are, like I know Jody does press releases. We talked to a couple of markets that really focus on doing press releases, maybe once a month, maybe do it every quarter. But it can be a way to just bring in a news story. Maybe it's a TV story or radio or print media. But it's just a way to get the word out there about what you're doing at your market, and this can be free. So, and build those relationships with local news people. If you find out that there's a supporter of the market who works at the local newspaper, try to really build that relationship out and find your allies in those valuable spaces in the community. And then really focus on putting your market on every single calendar you can find. Banks have calendars, chambers have calendars, again, local media have calendars of events. Go through, and it doesn't take a lot of time, and they're mostly free, and you never know what kind of customers you'll find in those that go to visit all these kinds of calendars to find things to do. So they can be a really valuable and free way to kind of get the word out about your market. And then on the don't side, don't put all your marketing energy in one audience's basket. So if you might not want to only do Facebook, because a Facebook might be there are people who aren't on Facebook, people who maybe only get all of their information from the newspaper or from a newsletter, local newsletter. So think about how to spread out all of your marketing energy to try to widen the net of the potential customers that you can reach. And then don't underestimate old-fashioned marketing. So the Andrea in Des Moines says that she did she did a whole project on marketing the market, and did radio ads, and did Facebook posts and Facebook marketing, like boosting posts and things like that. But really found that the most valuable thing for them was just hanging flyers around their community. And that was the way that people were actually finding out about the market the most. Jen Draper at the Cedar Rapids Market created magnets that had the dates of their farmers market, and just handed those out at the market for free. So people can put them on their refrigerator and always be reminded about the days they can go to the market. So don't spend too much of your, I guess, don't overly spend time on maybe digital marketing, and forget about some of these kind of old-fashioned, I guess, ways of trying to get new customers. We have a pretty significant section on measuring performance and data collection. Has been a focus of ours in the past few years to build out the I guess resources that markets feel like they have available to them to do this kind of work. We really don't have a strong idea of the true economic value of farmers markets. And from that perspective, I feel like it'd be really helpful if we knew that, to be able to know how to be able to urge local officials, people that hold on to money, to invest in these things that we find are valuable. So there's that kind of side of it. But then in addition, you're able to, if you gain this information about your market, you're able to make a lot more intelligent decisions and strategic decisions about growing your market or trying something new. So data can be very easy to collect, and it can be really helpful for you. And data doesn't need to be really complicated numbers. It can be as simple as these daily market reports, which I'll get to here in a minute. So with measuring performance, I think the main things to do if you haven't done it before but want to get started is just to spend time thinking about what the method is that you want to do. And think about this as across your entire market. So if you have a board or a committee, if you have really invested vendors that have been around for a long time, this is something that the whole market should do together to decide what kind of things that you all want to know about for your market, and really be specific with the method you do that, so you can continue that over time. So if you're the vendor, or if you're the manager, and in 5 years you might not be there anymore, but that market should still be following the same method of data collection so that it can be compared over time. That's a really critical piece, just to be consistent with your data collection methods. And similarly, you don't have to do it alone. It should be a group effort, not only with those at the market, but I feel like if you wanted to do a customer survey, or if you wanted to do a count, an attendance count for your market, this is something that you could reach out to local master gardener groups, local Boy Scouts, local Girl Scouts, any kind of area group in your community that might be able to be interested in, or might have volunteers on hand that would be interested in doing something for the market. So I guess it can be a quick one-off thing. They come for one day, they learn how to do a survey, and they help you. They talk to 10 people at the market, and they give you some really valuable information. And then really, if you're starting out, just try to record something about every market. These daily market reports can be a really easy way to do that. And they're simple as listing how many vendors are there, what's the weather like, and do you have any special events or programs? And then you can add into that if there's any additional information. So maybe it's the first day that there's strawberries, or it's the first tomatoes. Anything that could be a kind of a relevant landmark throughout the growing season that could show a change in market use or customer numbers or anything like that. Again, there's a lot of information in the manual about data collection and measuring performance, and a lot about surveys and how to do attendance counts. So if that's something you're interested in, there's a lot of information in there. And then there's a focus on fundraising in this chapter. And Kelly Foss from the downtown Des Moines market had this great input on how to find sponsors and really identifying who are the sponsors that share your mission, who shares your values, and then working with them to kind of essentially forming a partnership where you have this commonality. So they work with Unity Point Health. So their focus, Unity Point's focus is on healthy communities, healthy people. And so that fits well with that market. But if you're in a smaller community, identify, who those people are. Maybe it's a local convenience store, grocery store, or a hospital. Okay, so I was going to spend, this is just a couple of minutes on COVID-19. Again, Marie, tell me if this has been covered already, but spent some time last week just trying to get an idea of what markets across the country are doing to respond and to maybe change their market a little bit in response to COVID-19. So there's a few key market strategies, and then there's a couple communication strategies that I was just going to touch on real quick. So this is compiled from some work that the Farmers Market Coalition's done, as well as a really great document from the California Farmers Market Alliance, I think is what it is. And I can share links to this with Marie afterwards for those that are interested. But one of the top things to consider is just building a relationship with your local health department and have them kind of help with some of those planning efforts that you're doing at your market. They can really keep you informed as things change and advise you to make your market the safest place that it can be. Provide really clear signage, not only on things like stay 6 feet away and do hand washing, but also letting people know maybe where hand washing stations are. If you decide that you want to limit the number of people that are in your market at any one time, you might want to share that. But just being very obvious, I think, will not only inform people, but it will also show visitors that you're taking it seriously and that it's that you're kind of making it a priority to maintain kind of a safe space, I suppose, for visitors in the market. This number 3, I think, is it's an important component too, similar to when we were talking about the customer service, where one vendor might kind of sour the taste of the market to some customers. So I think it's really important to make sure that all market staff, vendors, anyone that is kind of there to promote, to work on behalf of the market, should be kind of on the same page with the appropriate behavior that we should be modeling. I think we're in a time where if a customer comes and a vendor gets closer to them than they're comfortable with, beyond closer in that 6 foot kind of distance area, that might really make the customer uncomfortable and not want to come back. And that can be just one person that can impact that. So I think it's important to just make sure that everyone's on the same page with how you're implementing your strategies to reduce exposure. Providing prevention supplies is really important. There's really quick easy ways to make portable hand washing stations with just plastic, like 5-gallon plastic carboy jugs with the twistable faucet handles and a 5-gallon bucket and some soap and just single-use paper towels. You can make one of those for maybe $50, and having a couple of those in your market can be really helpful. Identify actions to take if you need to postpone or cancel. So if you need to make a really rapid response, if something were to happen, have an idea of what is your communication method of getting in touch with all of your vendors. How are you going to inform the community about your change? Do you put out a press release, or are you going to post it on social media? Just kind of think through that process just so you know what it is if you need to do something. Most markets are completely eliminating any kind of food demo or sampling. There is, again, back to kind of the hand washing facilities, it's very common for there to be multiple hand washing facilities across the market, both for vendors and customers, and then have signs posted as a reminder. We're gonna have to kind of see what the glove availability is going to be like in the future, but it would be the best practice to have market staff wear gloves if they're handling money or tokens or vouchers. There's also for vendors, there's some agreement on vendors should be wearing gloves when they're handling produce, but on the other side of that, you might want to just really promote them to be washing their hands very frequently. And in addition to washing their hands, wiping down their surface. I saw one market is requiring that vendors wash their hands and wipe down all surfaces at least once an hour during the market. It's kind of up to you what you feel like your requirements should be. And again, that's something you can work with your local health department on. And then I've seen a lot of cool work with just sidewalk chalk on letting people know what 6 feet away looks like. You can mark out with an X in front of every vendor booth what 6 feet away looks like. You can even kind of draw on the ground what the flow of traffic should be like. And then this gets into the redesigning your layout. Just consider how you might want to space out your vendors at your market to kind of just spread out both the vendors themselves, but also the number of customers that might be waiting at any vendor booth. So think about, instead of using parallel rows, maybe you want to move to a single row or an L shape, and also think about how you want to move your market welcome booth. And if you are a market that has a lot of entrances, you might want to consider trying to rope off and consolidate to 1 or 2, just so you have a better idea of how many people are in your market at any one time, and being able to kind of make sure that anyone that enters is getting the information you want them to get about how to use the market in a safe way. And then with communications, a couple of key things that I've seen through a number of different press releases and things on social media and on websites. These are kind of the themes. Make sure that you're posting the date that you're putting your message out. Things are changing so rapidly. You want to make sure that people know that you wrote this on a specific day, and kind of get an idea of what we knew about the virus at that point in time. And then you can kind of say like updated on this day, but it's just a valuable thing to be able to show the readers. Really focus that you are, that your market is working and following with all public health recommendations, and that you're really putting a primary focus on the health of market staff, vendors, customers. So just really put that forward in strong language. And then get into why your market is going to continue. So you feel like, well, maybe you don't feel it, I feel this way. The market, that access to food that producers are producing locally should be a right. We should have the ability to access these products. And that's why your market's staying open. So and you can word this in any way, but just really put forward why you're staying open. Why do you feel like your market needs to stay open in this time? And then talk about the advantages of your market over other places to buy food. So this is kind of getting into your pitch about why people should come. I really like this example from Rogue Valley, which I believe is in Oregon. So they say, we're your safer grocery store. We're without walls. We have a shorter supply chain, open air, set limits on it limits the ability of the virus to build up on surfaces. We are doing these practices like separating 3 feet or more. So, you know, you're kind of informing people why your market is a good place to still go to in this time. And then let people know where they can find the most up-to-date information. So think about where you plan on posting things most frequently. So is that your Facebook page? Is that your website? Just think about and let people know where they can find that. So if they have a question before they come to the market, oh, are they still doing it? They know where to find it there. And then we're all kind of waiting to hear what the state decides on the status of farmers markets, but it's very common for markets to reference their governor's official statements. It just adds a little bit of credibility to your messaging, and lets the reader know that you're staying informed with the most official kind of language that we have here in the state. So that's what I had. I wanted to just spend a second to just acknowledge all the market managers and people that contributed to putting together this handbook. I think the strength of it, again, really comes from the direct input from market managers, and we appreciate all their time. And then here's our website with, there's a link to the toolkit here. You can also find it at the Northeast Iowa RC&D's website. And then here's my email if you need to reach out to me for anything, and then our social media accounts. I'd be happy to answer any questions. Got a couple minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Jake. All such great information and such crucial information, especially, I know we went back and forth as far as how much we're planning in a regular way for our farmers markets and in growth and strengthening our markets, yet at the same point trying to take on mentally what it will look like to host a farmers market among COVID. So we'll definitely keep an eye out for the governor's response, but yeah, what questions do you all have? If any, or it's been a long morning, so.
Yeah. Okay. And I bounced around a lot. It was hard to kind of focus in the whole publication in a few things. So it kind of scattered around, but hopefully there's at least a few things that people were able to pull out that might be valuable.
Yeah, we're in the chat. We were joking about starting markets at 3 a.m. or even 2 a.m. again, right? What a undertaking they did back in the day. I'm not sure any of us want to sign up for that, but. And
imagine running you would have had to take your horse to the market, so you probably would have to.
Yeah. How much product? I guess in the wagon, right?
Yeah.
It's all in the wagon. Some people probably feel like that anyway. I know we were even just brainstorming on the side about the mimosas and masterpieces component of, I know we talk so much about local food and the arts and how to tie those together. That's such a cool example, or some of the examples about marketing, even the magnets, like,
yeah,
it seems so basic, but it's true, right? It's simple.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, yeah, I'm just an email away. Don't hesitate to reach out if I can be helpful with anything.